This is going to be a video about canning, right? Basic canning. So the equipment that you have is your canner, and inside of here is a basket. And this is what you're going to put your jars on. You're going to lower them and raise them like this. You're going to want to fill this up with water so that it's probably to about here. So when you lower your full jars in there, your water should be up about 2 inches above the top of whatever it is that you're canning. So there's basically 3 sizes of jars here. The equipment that I have is a towel to put the hot jars on so that it doesn't touch your countertops. You've got your funnel. You'll use that to put the food that you're going to can inside of your jars. This is the jar lifter, and you'll use that because this is hot, so going in and out. The towel also can be used if you have, you might not have a large canning pot, you might have a big soup pot, and you may not have this right here. And what you can do is 2 things. You can take a towel and you can put a towel down into the bottom of that pot because you don't want these jars touching the very bottom of the pot directly to the heat. That can break a jar. Another option is to take some rings and place rings at the bottom of your pot. So if you have a soup pot that you're using, you won't have this. Use a towel or place rings under there. You can also purchase little kind of like rubber thing that expands that you can set down in there, but I find that I have some trouble with that because it keeps wanting to fold up, and I'm struggling with it. Another thing that you'll need is vinegar, and you're going to use vinegar, and it needs to be a 5% vinegar. It can't be just regular old distilled vinegar that you buy in the bottles, but this is special made for canning. Make sure it's 5% because a lot of food items you need to add a little vinegar to it to keep the acidity high when you can it. There's high acid foods and low acid foods. You're also going to use the vinegar to wipe the rims after you fill with your food. You're going to wipe these rims really well. Make sure there's no food or sticky stuff so that they get a good seal with your top. Once you put your food in there, you're going to do what's called fingertip tight. Fingertip means you're tightening it to where that's it. It can't move any further. You don't want to screw down real tight because I can go a little further with that, but that's too much. So fingertip means this. That's it. You also have your measuring spoons, your ladle to put into the jars. Make sure you have a nice washcloth handy. Wet is preferable to clean up messes. And you'll probably need some kind of salt. Now there's pickling and canning salt, and I use this Himalaya pink salt. You can use regular salt, just make sure it's not iodized. Iodized? The iodine in it, because that can, I'm not exactly sure why, but it doesn't work really well. So you need to use pickling salt or non-iodized salt or the Himalayan pink salt. And of course your measuring spoons and your your pot holders, because things are going to get hot. Jars are going to be hot, pots are going to be hot. There's going to be some hot things. You also want a bowl because you're going to take hot water in and out. When you first load up your canner, there's 2 ways to can. There's pressure canning, and just so you know, USDA recommends pressure canning for any low acid food. That would be things like beans, meats. High acid foods are fruits, tomatoes, that sort of thing. I still add a little bit of vinegar to the high acid foods if I'm canning tomatoes, say. If you're canning green beans, a little tip is add a tablet of zinc. Zinc is good for you anyways, and you're never going to taste the zinc when you add it to your jar, but it's going to keep your green beans a nice bright green, not that kind of mushy yellowish green. So I'm going to be going over some different tips as I can foods for you, but this is just the basic canning method and the equipment that you need. Let me think, what else did I want to tell you? So to start with, you're going to fill your pot with water. You're going to put it on the stove and you're going to bring it up to a rolling boil. You're going to take your jars to sanitize them. You can either, without the lids on, you can either just set them in like this and let the steam get them hot and sterilize them, or fill them about halfway or 3/4 away with water and lower them down into the boiling water. And then when you're ready to can, you're going to take those out, and you can dump some of that water into your pot. You're probably going to have too much water if you do all of your jars like that. So dump a couple in there, the rest of them dump them into a bowl, and then you have hot water in your bowl that you can use to add water once you get all your filled jars into here. If you need a little bit more, you've got a bowl with hot water. So having said that, any questions, put them in the comments. I'm happy to answer anything. And then I'm going to tag this at the end of each of the videos where I'm actually canning some things. I do what's called rebel canning. I talked a little bit about the pressure canners. Pressure canners that sit on the stove kind of scare me. And if you're beginning to can, which this is basic canning, they may scare you also. I did buy a Nesco electric canner made for canning food, and it works wonderful. But I have noticed that it tends to make meat very dry and maybe even taste a little burnt. I did some spaghetti sauce with sausage in it, and I wound up having to dump it out because it tasted burnt. So I do what's called rebel canning. And this is not FDA approved, but I'm going to tell you, people have been canning like this. The Amish and the Mennonites have been canning like this for centuries. And that is that you can, even your low acid foods like beans or chicken or stews, low acid foods in water bath canning. But once it gets to a low rolling boil, I wait about 20-30 minutes to make sure the content inside is very hot, like the rest of this. And I do a low rolling boil for about 3 hours. Now you want to add time for elevation, they say. There's arguments either way. If you're putting hot food into these jars, that's really the best way to do it, because you got hot food going into a hot jar into hot water. There's something called cold water or cold pack, where you don't heat your jars, you're putting the food in there and it's not hot, it's cold in a cold jar in the cold water, and then you slowly bring that all up to a boil. If you do that, again, you want to be sure you're doing at least 30 minutes when it hits the low rolling boil, at least 30 minutes before you start your 3-hour timer, because you want to make sure that the food inside your jars is heated all the way into the middle to start timing your food. So, having said that, please feel free to refer back to this video. Again, I'm going to tag it at the end of each video where I'm doing some canning. And we're back. Canning is done. I've got my diced tomatoes and I've got my sauce or puree tomatoes. Taking the rings off. This is how I'm going to test if they've sealed. One of the ways I'm going to test if they've sealed. I don't know if you can hear this or not, but if I tap on these, right, this one, hear that? So they all sealed on both sides except for one each. I've kept the rings on. Now I have a couple of options here. I can recan these. As you see, it's siphoned quite a bit. That might be the culprit of what happened, why they didn't seal. So I can reprocess these, but I've chosen, add a little liquor to it, reprocess them. But I've chosen to just put them in the refrigerator and I'll use them for dinner. The other way to test is when you pick this up. If you pick it up just by this rim here, right? Or if you take it and try to pull it off with your fingernails, just like that, and it doesn't come off, it's sealed. It is shelf stable for at least a year.